Good evening and welcome to the first of three webinars leading up to a 100th birthday celebration of Reverend Kelly Miller Smith. The Black church has always been the most influential and, I must say, respected institution of the African American diaspora. Tonight is no different. This moment is no different. And we have had African American clergy people leading the way on a national level. Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. in 1963 set the tone for what this webinar should be about. He said, we are now faced with the fact that tomorrow is today. We are confronted with the fierce urgency of now. In this unfolding conundrum of life and history, there is such a thing as being too late. This is no time for apathy or complacency. This is a time for vigorous and positive action. And so it is then that we are consulting clergy leadership about the public policy implications of our day. And we're focused on this Baptist preacher who was an author and a prominent activist in the civil rights movement and was based right here on a local level in Nashville, Tennessee. Reverend Dr. Kelly Miller Smith Sr. operated within the confines of Nashville as a real giant. And we will celebrate him on October 28th for a day-long symposium. But tonight, I am happy to introduce each panelist, beginning with Reverend Dr. Judy D. Cummings. Dr. Cummings is senior pastor of the historic New Covenant Christian Church, Disciples of Christ, and is the first woman to pastor this historic church in its 160 years of existence. Under her visionary leadership, she has led New Covenant to be a justice-seeking, multicultural, open, and affirming congregation who seeks to be an oasis of wholeness, building community inside and out, helping the congregation to grow and to mature in the Lord. That is her joy. A public theologian, Dr. Cummings is one of Nashville's most influential leaders, and as a trained community organizer who works to create a more just society. She is frequently called upon to speak and to act on issues of injustice, and is widely sought after as a preacher, a speaker, and a workshop facilitator. Dr. Cummings will bring to us from her vast experience, both as a retired nurse, a member of Delta Sigma Theta sorority, a charter member of the National Council of Negro Women in Middle Tennessee, and as a member of the Women's Political Collaborative and a member of Davidson County Democratic Women. Her contributions are innumerable. Let us hear from Dr. Judy D. Cummings.
Thank you, Reverend Dr. Teresa Smallwood, for that kind introduction and for your exceptional leadership as Associate Director of Public Theology of the Racial Justice Collaborative at Vanderbilt Divinity School. Nashville is a better place because you have graced us with your presence, and we have been students of your prophetic justice thought. I also want to thank Reverend Dr. Forrest Harris, our outstanding president of American Baptist College and the director of the Kelly Miller Smith Institute on Black Church Studies at Vanderbilt Divinity School. Certainly, I have benefited over the years from the offerings of the justice programs. It is my pleasure to be here with you today and a privilege to join this distinguished panel with so many public servants and innovative thought leaders in Nashville as we discuss the unique challenges that are facing our country and our city. Nashville, the it city for some, but not all, even as we approach this November the 3rd election. In the midst of COVID, we are facing many critical issues, layers upon layers of injustice that are uncovered daily. And I look forward to today's important event, this panel, as we speak to these injustices in the tradition and the celebration of the 100th birthday of Kelly Miller Smith Sr. You know, I remember as a layperson, I was always thrilled whenever Reverend Kelly Miller Smith came to the Temple Church to preach, or we visited there at First Baptist Capitol Hill. Dr. Kelly, as we called him, was indeed a cherished clergyman. His work as a civil rights activist, organizer, and bridge builder came through loud and clear in his sermonic powerhouse. When you left hearing one of his sermons, you felt like you could take on the world. You just were not going to be satisfied with any leftovers. And so I'm honored to help kick off this birthday celebration of one of God's trombones, truly a drum major for justice. I look forward to engaging in this much needed conversation. Thank you for hosting.
Our next speaker is Reverend Dr. John R. Faison Sr. Dr. Faison is the senior pastor of Watson Grove Baptist Church, The Grove, a growing multi-generational, multi-site church with campuses in Nashville, Tennessee, and Franklin, Tennessee. The Grove endeavors to be a growing church for growing people whom Christ still used or will use in growing his kingdom. A native of Boykins, Virginia, Pastor Faison earned a Bachelor of Arts in Political Science from Virginia State University in Petersburg, Virginia, a Master's of Arts in Practical Theology from Regent University in Virginia Beach, Virginia, and a Doctor of Ministry degree at Payne Theological Seminary in Wilberforce, Ohio. Under Pastor Faison's leadership, God is using the Grove to impact the city of Nashville and beyond with tremendous effectiveness. Since his arrival in March 2012, the congregation has grown from 300 to over 2,500 members. Pastor Faison has led the completion of several physical, logistical, and technical upgrades, as well as the hiring of additional staff in order to minister to this growing congregation. Dr. Faison is a passionate advocate for community transformation and development, and he serves on numerous boards and other civic entities, currently as the president of the Grove Community Development Corporation, a member of the Board of Trustees at Belmont University, and an alumnus of Leadership Nashville. Fraternally, he is a member of Omega Psi Phi fraternity and Sigma Phi Phi fraternity. Pastor Faison is married to his lovely partner in life and ministry, Minister Alethea Faison, and they are the proud parents of 3 amazing children, John Jr., Aja, and Jaden. And I must hasten to add that he is a global minister and a leader who has appeared with the Word Network, various universities, and most particularly as a social justice minister, a bishop of social action for the Full Gospel Baptist Church Fellowship. Pastor Faison.
Good evening to each and every one of you. What a joy to be able to share tonight. Grateful for the opportunity to be able to share. Also grateful, as Dr. Cummins has expressed, to Dr. Teresa Smallwood and her leadership in this space, as well as Dr. Forrest Harris. Grateful for your leadership and your effort to commemorate, to remember, and to celebrate 100th birthday of Dr. Kelly Miller Smith. I am not a native Nashvilleian, but I am very, very, I'm an avid fan of history. And just through my research of history and the history of Nashville, the name Dr. Kelly Miller Smith continuously comes up as we reference and remember pivotal moments, particularly during the civil rights movement, the integration of public facilities here in Nashville. It was Dr. Smith's leadership that aided the student-led movements, particularly in 1960, to help integrate downtown the public facilities, as well as providing shelter and space for organizing and advocacy. We celebrate his leadership and we celebrate his life and legacy. The Black church is, as many of you already know, a protest church. Born out of the dysfunctional genesis of this country, has always held up, sought to hold up a mirror to this country. Yet while holding a mirror to America, it also seeks to hold up a mirror to itself in order to remind itself that it is unapologetically an expression of the image of God. So it is advocacy, but also self-determination and self-identification. Throughout various eras in our country, the Black church has continued to be that voice of protest and justice. Yet it has experienced challenges, both from within and without. And in the day that we see, when this country wrestles with what I like to call COVID-19 and COVID-16-19, the presence of a global pandemic, while also wrestling with the resounding residue of systemic oppression and all of its manifestations, we must be very careful that we remain on the forefront and continue to sound the alarm to remind this nation of its better self. If not, we could possibly end up fulfilling that strange but powerful prophecy that Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. writes and shares in his letter to the Birmingham jail. He says, "So often the contemporary church is weak, ineffectual voice with an uncertain sound. So often it is the arch defender of the status quo. Far from being disturbed by the presence of the church, the power structure of the average community is consoled by the church's silence, and often even vocal sanction of things as they are. But the judgment of God," King says, "is upon the church as never before. If today's church does not recapture the sacrificial spirit of the early church, it will lose its authenticity, forfeit the loyalty of millions, and be dismissed as an irrelevant social club with no meaning for the 21st century. May God give us the power and the authority not to fulfill that prophecy."
Next, we have Reverend Lisa Hammonds. Reverend Hammonds is a native of Nashville, Tennessee, answered her call to the preaching ministry in 1996. She served on the ministerial staff of St. John African Methodist Episcopal Church, Nashville, until September of 1999, when she was ordained an itinerant deacon in the Tennessee Annual Conference of the 13th Episcopal District of the AME Church. In September of 2000, she was ordained an itinerant elder. Her ministerial gifts and emphases are Christian education and grief care. Reverend Hammonds earned a Bachelor of Arts degree in Business Administration with a minor in marketing from Middle Tennessee State University in Murfreesboro, Tennessee. This prepared her for a successful and multifaceted career in consumer lending. She also trained and was licensed to sell ordinary life insurance to individual and family markets. In 2000, Reverend Hammonds received her Master's of Divinity degree from Vanderbilt Divinity School in Nashville, Tennessee. While there, she engaged in diverse theological studies. She also participated in a global immersion program, observing ministry in other countries. Traveling to South Africa, Reverend Hammonds gained the distinction of becoming the first woman to preach at Jabavu African Evangelical Church in the city of Soweto. Reverend Hammonds' ministry is concerned with rightfully dividing God's word with practical applications, speaking to today's issues. She believes the church plays a pivotal role in addressing oppression and seeking justice by demonstrating God's example of love and community. To further her spiritual commitment, in October of 2007, she traveled to Israel, tracing the footsteps of Jesus from Nazareth to Jerusalem as the recipient of a Holy Rest grant sponsored by the Interdenominational Theological Center in Atlanta, Georgia, and the Cousins Family Foundation. Reverend Hammonds preaches throughout the United States and Nashville, Tennessee, and surrounding areas, exercising her ministry in numerous capacities. She serves on the staff of the AMEC Finance Department as an assistant to Treasurer CFO Richard A. Lewis. Further in her work in bereavement, Reverend Hammonds is a graduate of John A. Gupton College and is a licensed funeral director in Tennessee. She serves on the staff at Lewis and Wright Funeral Directors. Continuing her commitment to erudition, she works on numerous publications, lending her compiling, proofreading, and editing skills. And in 2016, she became the assistant editor for the Christian Recorder, the oldest existing periodical published by African Americans in the United States and the AME Church's official news organ. Notwithstanding her many obligations, Reverend Hammonds' priority is to the pastorate. Reverend Hammonds.
Good evening, and thank you, Reverend Dr. Smallwood, for the invitation to participate. Honestly, I wanted to begin my comments by admitting to the difficulty in being a pastor right now. But the truth is, I'm unaware of a time when being a pastor, to be one called to stand in the many faces of evil and proclaim hope to the hopeless, provide help to the helpless, make space for the voiceless, and offer respite and intercession for the oppressed and distressed, has not been hard. Moses faced it, David faced it, Jesus faced it, Richard Allen faced it, Martin Luther King Jr., Malcolm X, John Lewis, and Kelly Miller Smith Sr. faced it. No doubt all of us on this panel and our colleagues in the vineyard, both near and far, continue to face it. We see people protesting in these streets, crying out in the wilderness about police brutality, voter suppression, denial of health care, and mass incarceration. And our response should be to expect the God of our weary years, the God of our silent tears, the one who has brought us thus far on our way, to continue to provide strength for the stony road we yet trod. For some of these very same issues we face today are some of the same ones that have been fought despite varying levels of struggle and success for far too long. The clear indication from a national political and policy perspective is that a powerful minority control the majority. It is alarming and adds to our distrust of the system when now the post office is deployed as a weapon for controlling the vote. In many of the states within this nation, there is an active effort to divide and conquer local municipal leadership from state leadership. We are seeing across the nation the wholesale kidnapping of municipal governance in favor of Republican supermajorities. In Tennessee, we have seen a silent march toward the complete annihilation of local government. The most recent incident being the effort of Governor Lee to slap the hand of Mayor Cooper in the name of saving business entities. When the governor denies the appropriation of federal dollars that could aid hurting families on the pretext that it is not needed or he does not like the way the mayor is operating, it should send a sobering message to all of us to look more critically at the motivation. This is nothing less than the same political maneuvering we see from the White House to micromanage governors. This is real trickle-down economics. What is trickling down is authoritarianism. What is happening as a matter of policy in Nashville is that rational thought is now juxtaposed against our own fiscal and personal interests as a city by having an unpopular but necessary tax increase levied against the clandestine lure of freedom from that tax as a smokescreen for inserting greater statewide control. Moreover, our state legislature is slowly chipping away at our democratic freedoms by encapsulating peaceful protest in a shroud of death in which those who exercise their right to protest run the risk of being cloaked by felony charges. Our plight has been and continues to be one that not only preaches the good news of deliverance, but puts faith into action that promotes and promulgates the promises that we were created in the divine image that champions wholeness, spiritually, physically, emotionally, educationally, and politically. We must not only worship, but work. We must not only protest, but enact policy. We must not only sponsor programs, but ensure sustainable access to economic parity. This will not only bring urgent hope, but necessary help. It will not be enough for us to get people to register to vote if they don't get to the polls. We cannot allow attempts at voter suppression to prosper. It is not enough that protests are regularly planned if we do not also pressure and hold elected officials accountable. It is not enough that we are concerned about our buildings being closed or decreased offerings if we are not careful to ensure the security of our congregants' jobs and hours, healthcare, childcare, educational access, and residency in the face of federal, state, and local governments flexing for fake news. The system is broken and disproportionately impacts people of color, often with catastrophic consequences. This is a matter of life and death, not only for believers, but also for those who do not have the luxury of privilege and all of what that affords. Our lives, our livelihood depend upon the steps we take now. This fierce urgency upon us cannot be downplayed, disregarded, or dismissed because we think it doesn't affect us or our constituents. It absolutely does. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Our next speaker, Reverend Dr. Forrest E. Harris Sr., was appointed president of American Baptist College in Nashville, Tennessee in 1999. He is the director of the Kelly Miller Smith Institute on Black Church Studies that has a $1.2 million endowment for the perpetuation of theological education, theological study, and dialogue in African-American congregations. And he is assistant dean for Black Church Studies at Vanderbilt University Divinity School. Dr. Harris holds a Bachelor of Arts degree from Knoxville College, a Bachelor of Theology degree from American Baptist College, a Master of Divinity and Doctor of Ministry degrees from Vanderbilt University Divinity School. Dr. Harris has published 3 books: What Does It Mean to Be Black and Christian?, The Pulpit, Pew, and the Academy in Dialogue, and Ministry for Social Crisis, Theology and Praxis in the Black Church Tradition, and What Does It Mean to Be Black and Christian? The Meaning of the African American Church. Dr. Harris.
Thank you, Teresa Smallwood, my colleague. I am just excited about this webinar series, and thank you for joining with the Kelly Miller Smith Institute on the Black Church at Vanderbilt with the Public Justice Collaborative to bring attention to an urgent issue, urgent challenge of the times to Black churches. Thank you all for others who have spoken already and those who will speak after me for joining us on this webinar as we plan to celebrate the 100th, what would have been the 100th anniversary birthday of Kelly Miller Smith Sr. I have been directing the Institute on Black Church Studies, perpetuating the legacy of Kelly Miller Smith's prophetic movement and his tradition of Black preaching and social justice. And we continue that today. It is no question that we are in a moment of urgency as it relates to the witness and voice of the Black church, as it relates to transformative change in the society and in the communities that Black churches serve. In his book, Social Crisis Preaching, Kelly Miller Smith Sr. comments as it relates to Martin Luther King Jr. Perhaps more than anyone else of the present era, Martin Luther King Jr. called this generation to creative, effective, and persistent social ministry. This ministry must be carried out through the proclamation of the uncompromising word of a caring God, and through the exercise and courageous action required by that word. Kelly Miller Smith Sr. was an advocate of a liberating perspective of the word, of the truth, actually the truth and word that birthed Black churches on American soil. Black churches were birthed on American soil because of the non-liberating, dehumanizing of Black humanity as it related to American Christianity itself. And because of the church in America, in Western culture, Richard Allen and founders of the African Methodist Episcopal Church, Black churches and Baptist movements, all were started because of Black humanities being oppressed and neglected even by American Christianity. One of the issues I hope we discuss tonight is how do we move to the Black church reclaiming its prophetic birth, reclaiming its prophetic truth with moral imagination in order to deal with, as Lisa Hammonds just so eloquently described, all of the current issues that seek not only to diminish Black humanity, but also seek to destroy the democratic experiment that America holds so high in its understanding of itself. Kelly Miller Smith said also in that same text that as we think about connecting Martin Luther King Jr. understanding of the Black church and of America and how he intersected that with the beloved community vision that he had for America. He says, no mere recital of a few of King's accomplishments can exhaust the meaning of King. The essence of his prophetic hope and praxis cannot be accomplished simply by celebrating his birthday or recognizing his message in a way that domesticates the justice that he calls for. I suspect that the only way the Black church can reclaim its prophetic voice in society is to move beyond therapeutic solutions to the issues and brokenness that face Black Americans. It must move to a public policy advocacy position of active alliances that help the Black church do the education that is necessary to decolonialize the theology and understanding of what God's purposes in the world are for Black people, for all people, and for nations who want to honor the justice of God. If we move the church to a platform of active alliances that can collaborate to the point where injustice and policy formation and reformation is occurring, then the Black church, I think, can be a better voice in the midst of this kind of climate that we share. The pandemic moment, the racial disparities, all of the things that go to the multiple sufferings of marginalized people in this country. And I hope in our discussion this evening, we can talk about how the Black church moves from a position of passive alliances, that meaning allowing other voices to shape its understanding of its future, to active alliances that help it form public policies and policies that can change the way in which our nation is headed. I'm looking forward to the discussion.
Thank you, Dr. Harris. And next we have Bishop Joseph Warren Walker III. He is senior pastor of the historic Mount Zion Baptist Church of Nashville, Tennessee. He was born in Shreveport, Louisiana, to Deacon Joseph and Mrs. Rosa Walker. Received a Bachelor of Arts degree from Southern University in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, a Master's of Divinity degree from Vanderbilt University, and a Doctor of Ministry degree from Princeton Theological Seminary. He holds 2 honorary doctorates from Meharry Medical College and Southern University, respectively. He currently serves on the board of directors for Meharry Medical College and Citizens Savings Bank. In October of 2016, he was appointed by Tennessee Governor Bill Haslam to serve as chairman of the Board of Trustees for the Tennessee State University. He is also a member of Omega Psi Phi fraternity and the Kappa Kappa Psi Band fraternity. Bishop Walker currently serves as the international presiding bishop in the Full Gospel Baptist Church Fellowship International. In 2013, he was chosen to succeed the founding international presiding bishop, Paul S. Morton Sr. A prolific writer, Bishop is fondly called, or Bishop is how he's fondly called. He's an author of 11 books. He is married to the former Dr. Stephanie M. Hale, who is an assistant professor of pediatrics and neonatology at Vanderbilt University. Both agree that their most joyous accomplishments to date has been the birth of their daughter, Giovanni Willow, who was born in May 2012, and their son, Joseph Warren Walker IV, born February 2018. Bishop Walker.
Thank you so much, Dr. Smallwood and Dr. Harris. Thank you for your incredible leadership at Vanderbilt Divinity School and to this incredible convocation of influencers and colleagues of mine. I remain in awe of the legacy of Dr. Kelly Miller Smith Sr., and I yet remain challenged to continue his transformative work in the community that we serve. The evaluation of public policy, which of course is our focus today, is an urgent matter. And whether you participate in shaping public policy or not, I believe everyone is impacted, for better or for worse. And as a pastor, I'm not just interested in saving souls, but I'm equally concerned about the external forces that burden and weigh on those souls. Policies which present a threat to the abundant life we preach and envision for all of humanity, especially alarming. And this includes policies around education and voting rights, food disparities, health and housing disparities, policing, citizen engagement, and others. And I think we have to begin to ask some critical questions. One is, with everything we have in place as it stands, is it all working together for our good? And two, how are we deciding regulating measures and who are making those decisions? And how do we feel about those decisions and who they impact? I think also we have to look at how are we holding our elected officials accountable to the promises they make to people during the campaign season. And fourthly, I think if we view the budget as a moral contract, what would it say about our priorities? These are just, I believe, but a few things to consider if we are to have any hope at all for change. In fact, it is just this type of reconsideration that has characterized, I believe, this unprecedented year. I know myself, and I am sure many of you here tonight have had to stop and reimagine, rethink how we do church. But not only that, but why we do what we do. And no doubt, this health pandemic, coupled with the disturbing occurrences of police brutality fueled by pre-existing conditions of racism, has put neighborhoodlessness under the microscope. Can we really be our brothers and sisters' keeper? Or are we our individualistic ideology rule the day? This is what is at stake when it comes to public policy. And we must make sure not to allow public policy to be used in service of private interests. We must be honest about whether what is in place is working or not. And as a man called to care for people, the well-being of our community is central to that purpose. And I'm happy and honored to join in with these dynamic leaders tonight who share in this same call and to be a part of the solution moving us forward. Thank you.
What a rousing start we've had. But this conversation can go deeper. I noted a few things that were said in the beginning that I think really ought to push us all. I note, Dr. Faison, that you say the church is a protest church. And yet we have our state legislature trying to put a silencer on our protests. I ask you, but then I ask any of your other fellow panelists to talk to us about why such measures that we are experiencing in legislative action must be dealt with, and how should the church respond?
Great question, Dr. Smallwood. I'm sure for those who may not, who may be watching us tonight, who may not be a part of the Tennessee news cycle, may not be aware of what has recently occurred. Our governor, first of all, refused to meet with protesters that camped out in front of Legislative Plaza, our Capitol Hill here in Nashville, for some 60 plus days, calling for a meeting with the governor. Not only did he refuse the meeting, he made their presence illegal through passing clandestine legislation through the state legislature, basically outlawing them from being there and providing punitive damages that include up to 6 years in prison, a felony on your record, and of course, loss of voting rights. If the church is a protest church, then there ought to be a space for the church to stand with protesters. If the church is born and birthed out of this willingness to speak, stand, and take action against what is obviously a legislative overreach, I believe that this legislative action is probably going to result in judicial action and going to be overturned in the courts. Many argue that, many legal professionals believe the same, legal experts believe the same. But it is a statement. It is a statement to protesters, to persons who would dare to stand against this kind of overreach, but it's also a statement to a base that stands in agreement, full agreement with this. What we have in Governor Lee is a mini version of what we have in the White House. I believe we are seeing a perpetuation and a duplication of the model that ascended to the White House at state levels. Just simply successful business leaders, usually white businessmen, who are able to leverage economic prowess in a space where they do not have political acumen.
Mhm.
And then using that stage to promulgate and to stir up their base in ways that they know provides them cover for re-election and to really do whatever they need to do. I believe it is the church's responsibility to stand with protesters. I was proud that one of those protesters is named Justin Jones, and Justin Jones is a former intern at our church, and we stay in connection, we stay in touch, and we've as a church we made some gestures to make sure that they were covered and had what they needed. There was also false arrest of him as well as some other protesters, and we worked diligently to try to make sure that they were covered and cared for. I think that's our call. I think that's if we're going to be a protest, to wrap up my comments, if we're going to be a protest church, we can't be against protesters who are attempting to bring to light obvious injustice.
Thank you, sir. Reverend Hammonds, you brought this out so very eloquently in your opening statements. And just to go just a little bit deep on this idea of what's clandestine, you really did capture that that aspect of things. And I have to go back, Dr. Cummings, to our reading of Nancy McLean's book, Democracy in Chains, the radical right's stealth plan for America, where she lays out that there are groups, I believe one of them is called Americans for Prosperity, who work together with ALEC and other, libertarian oriented groups to work on these legislative agendas. And so not only do we have folks coming in here, sliding in records around protest, but now we have them actually carving out records that would take local government and make it a mockery. And Reverend Hammonds, you brought it out already, but if you have anything more you want to add or anything you'd like to say in regards to what Reverend Faison has said, please join in.
Well, I think from my denominational background, I wanted to raise up that, Brown Chapel AME Church in Birmingham was used for staging in the civil rights movement. Claiborne Ball Temple in Memphis was one of the last churches that Martin Luther King Jr. Came to Memphis, actually, the weekend he was assassinated, came to work in the sanitation strike movement in Memphis, and that was staged at Claiborne Ball Temple. So the AME church is rooted and grounded in protest. And to Reverend Dr. Faison's point, that basic inalienable right to protest is now being challenged, threatened, is not only an assault upon our civic rights, but I think our spiritual rights as well. When you look at Jesus, who went to the temple and saw that there was injustice going on, that there was a mockery being made of the temple, did not hesitate to raise ruckus, to raise holy hell, if you will. May I, all of my colleagues, raise holy hell in that situation because of the injustice. And he was not going to be deterred. He was not going to be stopped. He was not going to be assuaged. He saw something that wasn't right and said something, spoke truth to that, spoke power and truth to that injustice. We are not called to do any less as followers of that same Christ. And so I think that when we have policies and people that stand in the face of us to try to stop that, that is, we have to say something to that. We have a natural response. We have a spiritual foundation and a holy audacity to be able to respond.
Well, Bishop Walker, when I think in terms of our holy audacity, I was really provoked a few years back when Princeton University professor Eddie Glaude Jr. declared that the Black church is dead. And, the provocation was not to suggest that we have no influence, but it was to suggest that we had lost our protest. And I'm hearing you today, sir, with so many statements around this threat of policy and this notion that there has to be critical questions asked. I'm saying to myself, how can anyone claim that the Black church is dead? What do we say to them? And how do we show up? See, I started out making this juxtaposition between national leadership and local. You represent, sir, both of those. You represent a conglomerate of Black people who can mobilize. What should we be doing?
Well, I think that's exactly correct, what you just indicated. I think it is our mobilization of resources and folks to move the needle in terms of educating our people around their voting rights, to really be able to speak truth to power. I think often the misrepresentation of the Black church, or the the audacity to declare the Black church is irrelevant or impotent in this place, is probably due to the fact that somewhere down the line, I think the church has been guilty of prophetic laryngitis. And I think in a sense we have assimilated into certain relationships. We've been at tables with no influence or no power. And I think that what we have to do certainly is protest, and we have to support the protest, but we have to also be at the table to be able to affect change, and to be willing to make those tough calls, and to really have folks among our ranks to hold us accountable as clergy. And I think it's incredibly important what we've attempted to do on the national level. And Dr. Faison has been incredibly helpful for us in that regard, and our social action. Every Reformation, every African-American Reformation should really have a focus on social justice and policing and policy. And that is something that's very dear to us. And to that point, I've stated that it cannot be an asterisk. It is an artery of the Full Gospel Baptist Church Fellowship. And I think even in the church itself, in the local church, I think you have to begin to think about the work that the church does. These politicians, they come, these photo shoots, they come during the time of election, but there is no accountability. And I think that when we begin to leverage the influence that we have, and really begin, to affect economically and affect change in our community, and show them the strength in numbers, I think that that's when people begin to realize the Black church is absolutely vibrant, effective, and relevant. One of the things I think that is very critical to moving that needle forward in terms of our efficacy as a Black church is collaboration. No longer can we operate in silos, denominational, being segregated by denominational alliances. I think now more than ever, I think the connectivity of our leadership is important, to come together as a united front, because that can be an impenetrable force that really can speak to power versus one singular leader. In the day, the civil rights movement, it was that generation that raised up singular leaders, Dr. King and others, who spoke on behalf, but now there needs to be a united front. And I think that's what we're seeing in the ground movement of Black Lives Matters and others. These are movements that involve a multitude of people. And I think that when the church grabs hold to that collaborative model, I think that's when we become a force to be reckoned with.
Thank you so much, sir.
May I say something, Dr. Smallwood?
Please.
And so I just want to make sure, for our audience sake, that we're making the distinguish between the Black church and the white evangelical church. And so when we talk about prophetic justice, when we talk about being a prophetic witness, we're describing the Black church. We know that the white evangelical church basically has made a pact with evil. And what we're seeing today is that moral decline within that church. We also, you brought up the democracy in chains, and organizations like the alt-right, who are doing all within their power to make sure that quote unquote multicultural forces who are using political correctness and social justice to undermine white people, that they will do all within their power to make sure that organizations like those that the Black church supports and the Black church did not succeed. And so I just want to make sure that we're making that distinguish between, for our audience sake.
Well, I was coming to you anyway, Dr. Cummins, because this is right on your street. This idea of protest, but it goes further than that. It goes to also the capacity for us to impose ourselves in the process of democracy. You have done that. You have been one who served on the planning. You've been one to be a court observer. You've been one to do all these things. But the question becomes, when we really think about someone like a governor saying, with people hurting through COVID-19, with people not having insurance, sending money back to Washington, telling our governor, telling our mayor, you can't have $83 million that we know folk need because you haven't done right by the businesses. What should the church be doing and saying?
Well, thank you. And you're absolutely right. I'm so glad that we're now turning our conversation toward our governor, because we need to be concerned about our local leadership, right? We know that November the 3rd is coming. That's a national election, but we just had an August 3rd election, and we'll be having an election here soon for a new governor. Our governor, Governor Lee, has been most disappointing. I'm sure that you all have seen my Facebook post or read the newspaper. For a governor who claims to be a Christian, right? I believe has abdicated his faith. Matthew 25:35 says, Jesus says, when I was hungry, you fed me. Do this for the least of these. What you're talking about, Dr. Smallwood, is a Governor Lee who has intentionally withheld $50 million worth of food that could have gone for food to feed the children in Tennessee by imposing a barrier, a necessary barrier of an application process. And so because parents did not complete the application, what he basically said was, oh, the money is not needed. And so he sends it back to the federal government. I think one of the panelists said that our Governor Lee seems to be a mini me of 45. And that is a accurate, I think, description. Not only did he send that money back that could have fed our children, particularly during COVID-19, the nutrition that they need in order to keep their immune system up to go into the petri dish of what Betsy DeVos is now calling a classroom. Not only did he do that, but he also left, and that was only $50 million. But I don't know if our audience knows that he also left $752 billion on the table that should have gone for temporary assistance need for families. He left it on the table because he, as judge and jury, decided that he didn't think that the people needed it. And so what we're seeing now, even with this rift with Cooper, is we're seeing a government who has taken an oath to serve the people in their great state, who is not serving their people. But whenever what we're witnessing is a power struggle, right? And whenever power is questioned, we see people coming together to band together to protect that power. And so one of the ways that we're experiencing that is with the withholding of funds that are desperately needed so that people can do exactly what they say, and that is to be able to imagine and to live with life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. So you're absolutely right. We're seeing that this power struggle. We're seeing a governor who is not caring for the people, and so that leaves that void. And I believe then that is why this is the Black church's finest hour, to be able to step into that gap and to be able to speak and to call out and to call in.
So, Dr. Harris, when we talk about bringing these alliances together, I just love the way it was put, from passive alliances to active alliances. That was what the brother said. When we talk about that, what does that mean in the context of fake news, as Reverend Hammonds brought out? When we understand that there have always been these measures of trickery, the kinds of trickery that will cause our people, if they're not conscious, to see something like a referendum on the tax as a positive, when in fact it's really a maneuver, a machination for the purpose of taking over Nashville's whole agenda. In other words, if that referendum passes, we will be sunk economically. And as a result of being sunk economically, there'll be so many deficits that then the governor can say, oh, you can't manage yourself. So we need the state comptroller to come and take over your finances. And before long, the things that you thought you had or the things you thought you could do, now they're in the hands of the red state. Even though we're a blue dot in the red state. If we don't make some alliances, particularly among churches, Black churches, we're going to be in for trouble. What do you say, sir?
Yeah. What I meant in my earlier comments about active alliances connects with the need for Black church solidarity around what justice means for the communities we serve. And I'm not so sure that we have a communal consensus about what justice means for our community.
Mm.
And we continue to allow dominant structures, even governmental structures, define what justice means. And therefore, Governor Lee and other prognosticators of government power continue to define that reality for us. So I think it's necessary for us to deconstruct what it means for us as a Black church alliance to define justice for not only our community, but for Tennessee. And we must do that because our theological content and our praxis vision for change actually gets at the root of the matter and radicalizes the church's voice in the midst of the public policy debate. Our voice is just not there. We can critique Governor Lee. We can critique the issues as it relates to how they maneuver political mechanisms to advance and perpetuate a ideological political nationalism that white evangelism supports. That's one thing, and we do need that critique, but we need to dig deeper into our own sense of the Black churches as public policy advocates to create the alliances that become active in helping our people be empowered to speak and to be at the table and to challenge these structures. It's critically important that, and the reason why these seminars are so important that we are having here in this series, and thanks so much for Lisa Hammonds and Bishop Walker and Dr. Faison and Judy Cummins, leaders in the community and others who would join us, is for us to be creative in thinking about what an active alliance means with the resources of people, the resources of education, the resources of the Black business community, the political development we need for our leadership so that we can be civically engaged at the church's level, doing the appropriate education at the church's level to help form public policy in a way that we can challenge the way the system is working against our people. That's what I meant by this active alliance. And to also face up to the fact that we're not doing that education well within the Black church. That white evangelicalism and its whole sense of what James Lawson called plantation capitalism, and what we see as a kind of therapeutic approach to meeting the needs of people to empower them to cope from Monday to Sunday, is pretty much a way in which we take them, our lay people, out of developing their civic capacity to make changes on their behalf. I remember a statement that Dr. King made about Mother Pollard in the movement in Montgomery in 1955, when they walked for so many days, 365 days. And one of the reporters asked Mother Pollard, were her feet tied? And she said, no, my feet are not tied, but my soul is rested, because she was engaged in public policy, public change, and an activist movement. So what I hope we can do is bring the best of the Black church in Nashville, the best of our theological prowess and content, our prophetic imagination, moral imagination, to build a narrative of public policy formation that seeks to change and transform the way in which our communities suffer, as well as impact Tennessee, because it is a red state in terms of this ideological canon. But we have political power. Now I'll make this one last statement. In my class today at Vanderbilt on public policy in the Black church, and it just so happened to have this night, I indicated that Adam Clayton Powell back in the 60s at Abyssinian Baptist Church and other Black churches led by Kelly Miller Smith here in Nashville, who was president of the National Black Churches movement, took out a full-page ad in the New York Times and laid out and framed what power meant as it relates to the Black community to advance the cause of social justice as it relates to the movement at the time. It is that kind of active alliance and that kind of voice that we need to bring together in Nashville. Our IMF, our other kind of organizations and so forth, we are fragmented too much apart from that solidarity. And I think John Faison, Bishop Walker, Reverend Hammonds, and Judy Cummins, we got to find a way to get beyond the barriers that have blocked that from happening so that we can get this creative alliance and power, because life and death is hanging on the margins for our people. While we do great individually, and while we do great in our preaching prowess and our prophetic understandings, our alliance is fragmented as it relates to the Black church. And many of them, because it's fragmented, many of our churches and our people are mimicking the very red ideology of republicanism in this country. And many of our Black people don't know how to navigate the voting culture. And this time it is urgent. And I think that's the reason why we call the urgency of now for this Black church public policy discussion. Thank you.
We're going to give the audience an opportunity to ask a few questions, but I want to give Bishop Walker the last word. You said something very profound when you raised this concept of individuality, and this sort of rabid individuality seems to me to be running the country. This notion that, you know, I got mine, you got yours to get. You know, basically the country belongs to Trump. And there's this idea that everything works for him. But you said when we can ask the questions, you know, of ourselves, our congregations, you know, what's working, what's not working. And then you asked this, you said, how we do church. What are these pre-existing conditions, right? And my question to you is, when we really say this stuff like we're our brother and sister's keeper, who does that apply to?
Thank you for that question. And of course, I think it implies, it certainly involves the entire community. I think we have to have a redaction of, you know, our orthodoxies, our orthopraxies, how we have, you know, looked at our own theologies within our churches and realized that our community is much broader than we have historically, you know, tried to suggest. I think that there is more in common than there is more that divides us. And I think there has to be an intentionality and a courageous effort by leadership to be willing to really sit at the table and have conversations around how can we move the needle forward in creating alliances and affecting policies in a way that involve all people and the rights of all people. You know, when we talk about, you know, Black Lives Matter, I mean, all Black lives matter. It doesn't matter, you know, who you are. It doesn't matter what your, you know, political or your sexual orientation, nothing matters. What matters to us is that each individual, the humanity of every single person, is at stake. And I think that's what we have to do as the church. And we have to be willing to take that hard look at ourselves and take that hard look even in terms of, you know, how we have entrenched ourselves within, you know, our own isolated places and how we function. I think we are better in a communal way. And I've said it so often, I've said it humorously, and many folks have heard me say it. I think, you know, we're better together. I tell people, I don't care if you don't have but 2 teeth, they look better together. I mean, the fact is, we are better. How beautiful and pleasant it is for us to dwell together in unity. And I think that's how things get done. And we have to put aside our differences, and we have to come to a place now. COVID-19 has revealed so much to us in our community, the disparities that impact all of us, and education, health, all of these different disparities. And we have a singular enemy, and we have to be clear about that, right? And we have to come together as a community, and we have to fight against those forces that are committed to suppressing us, and to silencing us, sanctioning us, and we have to rise up and show that we are a force to be reckoned with.
Amen. Amen. Ms. Shatika, anyone have anything you want to lay on top of that?
Well said.
Is well said. Ms. Shatika Brown will now share with us the questions coming from the audience.
Thank you all. The first question from the audience: based on the politics of Jesus, and besides voter registration drives, what should our churches be leading our people specifically to be doing now and to continue to do beyond the election?
I can begin. I think that one of the things, and I can just share some of the things that our church is doing leading up to the November the 3rd election, is that as we talk about being a prophetic church, we have to motivate our people to understand why the Black vote matters, why everyone is needing and wanting the Black vote. We have to make sure that our folk are registered to vote and that our folk actually get to the polls. And so one of the things that we're doing right now, we're doing a Justice is on the Ballot campaign. You have the opportunity to run a van, a voter action network on your congregation to see if people are actually registered or not. Because, you know, some people will tell you, oh, I'm registered. Well, you can see if they're actually registered or not. You can see if they're registered and you can see if they vote or not, because there are a lot of people who are registered who simply do not vote. You won't be able to tell if they voted Republican or Democrat or Independent, but you will be able to tell if they voted. You'll be able to tell the last time they voted. And then you can shape some education opportunities around that. So many young people are so discouraged right now. And they're saying, well, I'm just not going to the polls. Well, we can't just let those kinds of statements and those kinds of comments just lay there. We have to actively engage our people. The pastor, I believe, is the best person to do that for their particular congregation. But then we have to come outside of the four walls and lend our voices in the public square to say, no, our vote does indeed matter. And then to challenge these corporations. You know, so many of them now are using their ads and using social media, you know, to talk about, well, Black Lives Matter. Well, now we need to push them even further and help them understand and get the word out that the Black vote matters. So I think that's some of the things that the church certainly can do.
I'll respond to this as well. I think one of the things that the church can do, I think one of the things that faith communities at large can do is what I call election discernment. Election discernment is really understanding what voting is and what it is not. When you vote, and we have to teach our folk, particularly those who are so just disturbed, discouraged, and fed up with the political scene. We have to teach them that when you vote, you are not voting for an answer to problems. You are voting for the opportunity to influence through policy and through persons to help provide an answer to problems. So voting is not the ceiling of civic engagement, it's the floor of civic engagement. So voting is not, I'm not picking someone to be the answer. I'm providing myself an opportunity to influence. So then, if that is the case, then when I vote, I'm never looking for a perfect candidate. Mm-hmm. There are no perfect candidates. I'm not looking for a perfect candidate. I'm looking for a pliable candidate. Mm-hmm. What does that mean? I'm looking for a candidate that can be engaged, one that can be convinced, one that can be persuaded, and if need be, one that can be forced. I'm looking for a candidate that we can, through our community and through our networks, impact, influence, and maneuver. So what does a pliable candidate look like? I'm teaching this on Sunday. That's why it's on my heart. What does a pliable candidate look like? A pliable candidate is a person who has some sense of a moral compass. Mm-hmm. There is some guiding ethos that they use to really drain and come to their major decisions. There's something that guides them. A pliable candidate is also a person who listens. They understand empathy. They understand emotional intelligence. They are not afraid of dissenting views. They understand the need to hear from folks that are not like them. A pliable candidate is also a person who is honest and owns the mistakes of their own past.
That's right.
Not afraid to wrestle with the missteps and the mistakes. They're not creative in creating new versions of history. They understand where they fail and they own it. Lastly, a pliable candidate is a person who centers themselves in the stories and the experience of other people.
Mm-hmm.
And you really want to know a candidate that does this. You only have all you have to do is look at their staff.
Mm-hmm.
What do they look like? Does everybody look the same? Are there different voices? Is there diversity? Is there inclusion? If you see that, what you are dealing with is somebody who is comfortable with hearing other voices and really wants those voices. That's the kind of candidate you want. You're not looking for perfect, you're looking for pliable.
Yeah.
And if you find pliable, now you've got someone that once elected, they can now be influenced. The election is the start of the game, not the end.
I would add to that, if I could, Dr. Smallwood, that we put a lot of attention and focus on the presidential election, but we really need to start paying attention to all the elections, from the local to the state to the federal level, or to the national level. Just as Dr. Faison said, that those candidates have to be pliable, that they need to be able to be worked with. We need to hold them accountable once we elect them, and we have buy-in once we do that, because we have vetted them, we have engaged them, we have questioned them. And so these things that are important to us, food disparity and apartheid within our communities, crime and policing, affordable housing, economic opportunities, education, healthcare, accessibility, all those things we can question on the local level. And once we get people who are thinking as we are thinking and have values and ethics like we have them, that are going to be advocates as we join into partnership and collaboration, somebody said, with them toward furthering these policies, then we hold them accountable. And then we go to the next level and the next level. And so I think our ongoing engagement looks like holding people accountable, that we become activists. I think somebody said something about a lethargy. I think that it is important that we stop trying to create lazy Christians, and that we start really empowering believers to be disciples, to be the voice and the hands and the feet of that in which we believe, and to do likewise. And so when we see injustice, to speak to it. When we encounter people who are marginalized or who are vulnerable, who are weak, to be able to stand and be strong and bear their infirmities, that we make room for people who have been pushed aside, who have been pushed back. I think that's what we're called to do, because that's who, to profess our Christianity is to follow Christ. And that's what Christ did. And so we need to be able to to somebody's point, join together to be able to accomplish that.
We have a question from Facebook. If the Black church was born out of protest, does the Black church also stand in solidarity and protest for Black and brown LGBTQ rights, gender rights, environmental rights, and other social justice issues? And do you see the Black church broadening its platform to engage other historically suppressed groups in our fight for social justice?
Quick answer, we better.
Yeah.
We better figure it out. But Bishop Walker has eloquently shared, we're better together. There's nothing worse than having marginalized people fight each other.
Yeah.
What do you accomplish? What do we get done? There can be no agenda. There can be no progress. There can be no consolidated effort if we are still in a space where we're questioning who has value. We better get over it.
Yeah, I think that is a very critical issue. And thank you, Faison, for responding so precisely to the issue, because inclusivity of all persons who are oppressed in whatever form, whatever way, requires for us as advocates of voices for the Black church to speak into that oppression with a theological vision of justice and equality and equity, no matter the difference, no matter the sexuality, no matter what we have been conditioned to think about those differences. We've got to. If we don't, we lose our prophetic voice in all the other areas as well. And that's one of the misnomers, is that we think we can be prophetic and we think we can have power and voice. And then when oppression raises its head against a people because of the difference, we are silent. Then we silence our other voices as well. And we might as well face the truth about the Black church. The Black church is homophobic and has been homophobic. The Black church is sexist and hierarchical and male privileged. And we still have not solved those internal problems to the point wherein we have a prophetic voice, as that question calls us to do. And it has to do with our theological positions being co-opted by those very kinds of ideological canons. And that's another part of this creative alliance that I mentioned, is because you pay a price for affirming LGBTQ people in your churches, in the community. You pay a price, and you pay a price wherein it might be that it may affect the purse, it may affect the membership once you are public in affirming people of different sexualities and different cultural formations. So I think it's a critical problem, but another discussion that requires another time. But I think that question is right there.
And I think if we're going to be, I thank you, Dr. Harris. I think if we're going to really be honest and we're going to be transparent, it is difficult to talk about the Black church being to come together in collaboration and in unity on one accord, when for a long time the Black church has been not so, as it pertains to gender issues. That was, long time ago. People think that we've come a long way. But if you look in some sectors, some churches in this very city, we have not come so far. And so if we haven't bridged that gap, I think that it begs the question, can we come together as it pertains to welcoming whatever is defined as other, be it who we love, be it our ethnicity, be it the fact that we don't live in the same neighborhoods or drive the same cars. We don't have the same backgrounds, or our criminal records are different, et cetera, et cetera. And so I think the Black church is looking to us saying, if you don't even welcome me, how am I then going to be able to trust you to speak for me?
Mm-hmm.
So it's one who has paid the price, because we don't just talk about public policy, we do public policy. It is really hard for people to hear from the Black church, who wants to be the prophetic voice, the leading voice for people, when it does not include all people. And so as we talk about, as someone said, as we talk about coming together with these alliances, I think that that's a conversation that we're going to have. Not that every denomination has to believe the same or be the same, but I think that it was Dr. Harris who early on said that we have to look at people's humanity. And if nothing else, I think that the Black church should be the witness for humanity. And so it's really hard. We talk about holding public officials accountable. We talk about, we need to get people out to vote. Well, we also need to look at what their character is, what their beliefs are, because if not, we just continue to perpetuate what's already there, and that is a system of oppression. So as we're going out and educating and talking, we need to also lift that up. But I think for the church, who comes under a lot of critique and a lot of criticism, and should, we need to own that we are not, we're not being all who we have said that we are either. And that the Black church has been a place of a lot of hurt for a lot of people.
Yeah.
And so sometimes when lay people hear the Black church speaking, they turn a deaf ear because the Black church has been so hypocritical.
Is that not a case where the oppressor has started acting as the oppressor? The oppressed has started acting like the oppressor?
Absolutely, and we even saw that during civil rights movement, right? When women's voice, even though women were doing a lot of the work, that their voices were silent, or they were not given the accolades or the recognition, and we continue to see that even today. So you're absolutely right. Again, all of this that we're talking about this evening is about power. It's a power struggle.
Yeah. One quote, I can't remember exactly who said it, about history, in particular history of oppressed people. The quote is, "History is what hurts." It is what hurts. It's accumulation of hurt. It's accumulation of denial. It's accumulation of pain. It's accumulation of trauma. It's not just an accumulation of facts of what happened. It is how history continues to inform us of what has wounded people. And in woundedness, people look for nurturing spaces and environments for wholeness and healing. And I think I heard a sermon by the Reverend Dr. John Faison in our Ghana Native lectures a couple of years ago that dealt with how even the disciples of Jesus and others who were close to him wounded him and hurt him in their denial of who he was. And just think about the Black church denying who people are and claiming a sense for them that they can be whole without them being affirmed deeply in their humanity. And that hurts. And we have accumulation of hurt and woundedness in our Black churches and in our Black communities. And while we can put on the charade that we are offering them therapeutic solutions to that hurt, when we don't affirm them, it is about the hypocrisy of white evangelicalism and white churches and Black churches as well, who don't own the humanity of all people in the way that we should. And I think that is a way forward for our agency and our alliances to really matter. Even with Black Lives Matter started by queer females, we can't affirm that movement without affirming them and others like them in the way in which we move forward. I struggle with that within my own denomination, of course. I struggle with it within how we educate people here at American Baptist College. And I struggle with it in even family and family relations, because we have not taught people the holistic vision of how God affirms the humanity of people. And we've got to do that theological work. And we got to speak to it if we're going to be a Black church with voice in the 21st century.
And when we don't do that theological work, people don't hear the rest of the work that we do, and they don't respect the rest of the work that we do.
I will now turn it over to Dr. Smallwood for final remarks from the panelists.
Well, I need to say first and foremost how really thrilled I am that this conversation happened, that you all said yes, and that you came tonight with your very, very important statements, prophetic statements. I'd like to give each of you an opportunity to have a final word, and then we will close our discussion. Let's start with you, Bishop Walker, and we'll go the reverse of our alpha.
You mute.
Thank you so much, Dr. Smallwood, and thank you Dr. Harris, for convening this incredible discussion. To all of my colleagues, it's been an honor. I've grown tremendously. Listen, I believe in the Black church. I believe in what's possible. And I know that there's a lot of criticisms that can be levied at our ineffectiveness, but revelation is progressive. We all become. Men sat in darkness and light was sprung up. Darkness comprehended it not. And when that revelation comes, we have to be merciful, a sense of patience, allowing people to come to that revelation and courageously stand with us and embrace all people. I think that we have an opportunity now more than ever, because I think the proverbial light is shining on the Black church now. What will we do? Not what will we say? What will we do? And it is the work in the trenches. It is the work of impacting policy, dealing with these disparities in a very impactful way in our local congregations, partnering with each other, and even nationally. It is the work that we do. So I believe in the best of us, and I am hopeful and optimistic. This conversation has inspired so many. And let me say this finally, and I speak this as a reformational leader, and I certainly want you to hear me loud and clear. There is a generation of us who are coming. And don't give up on what's possible. We're having these conversations and we are forming these alliances, and there are people who are coming alongside us, and the church will breathe again. We will. And we will breathe, and we will shout, and we will prophetically declare what God's will is for us in the earth and embrace all humanity. And so I just want you to be encouraged, particularly those of you who have been in lament for some years at the church and its inability to affect change and to address all of these very critical issues. So thank you again for having me. I appreciate it.
Oh, am I in the reverse alpha? Let me just applaud the panel, and I use my closing remarks to just affirm what Bishop Walker just said and all that has been said. And I need not add any more closing words that can rise to what this experience means for us in terms of the academy and the church, the Kelvin Miller Smith Institute, and our public collaborative and public justice work with Teresa Smallwood, and now having these church leaders and others who will join us in other webinars to speak to what we need to internally think about in terms of transformative change for our own voice to be impactful through our churches, and the transformation that we need ourselves to build trust and solidarity between leaders so that we can now rise to the occasion and build what our people need in terms of trusted leaders who love them and want to show mercy and justice and compassion toward their struggles. So thank you.
In light of the many struggles that stand in our way, this task before us seems not only a hard but insurmountable endeavor, and it might be if we weren't alone in it. However, we have power that has not yet been accessed and favor not yet realized. And if we can collectively put aside personal agendas, individual pursuits for positions that emulate those examples of the powerful few, we might have a chance in standing up, speaking out, and striking against those in high places. COVID-19 has shown us that we can do things in new and fresh ways. And if ever we needed to emulate or evaluate what exists, engage in advocacy, explore new options and opportunities, and press our way to enact programs, protections, and laws that ensure equity and equality to all of us, especially those most vulnerable because of systemic discrimination and oppressions, it is now. And so I want to acknowledge the Kelly Miller Smith Institute and the Public Theology and Racial Justice Collaborative of Vanderbilt Divinity School, my alma mater, for having the courage to call faith leaders to task and to the table so that we can wrestle and address these issues. So thank you so much. I want to acknowledge and celebrate you in doing that. Thank you so much for having me.
Awesome. I believe I'm next. Well, let me join the chorus of gratitude that's been shared by my colleagues tonight. Thank you, Dr. Smallwood. Thank you, Dr. Harris, for this convening. Thank you for pulling together these voices and these conversations, a series. This is not the last one. So this is part one, and it is definitely a conversation to be continued. In closing remarks, I would say unapologetically, I am a Black church apologist. I love her to my soul. It is where I met the brown-skinned day laborer from Nazareth. It is where I met it. And I love the Black church enough to celebrate her and critique her. And both are necessary if love is where the actual sentiment arises from. But I also understand the nature of Black people, and nobody hopes better than Black people. And so because of that, I remain hopeful. Hope is the oxygen for our potential. If our hope dies, our tomorrow dies. And so I'm excited. I'm still hopeful. I am bloodied, but not bowed. There's a lot happening. There's a lot taking place, yet there is something springing forth. Have you not yet seen it? There's something fresh and amazing that is happening in the Black church. And I'm just excited to be a part of it. I'm hopeful. I believe our best days are still in front of us. And I look forward to keep swinging in the trenches with my colleagues and my co-panelists.
I believe I'm the final panelist to make remarks. Again, I also join my fellow panelists in just giving thanks and praise for this opportunity to have this platform. So thank you, Dr. Smallwood, for your imagination of putting this together. And thank you again, Dr. Harris, for the work that you continue to do. My work, my research is the Black church. I had to fight long and hard to make sure that the Black church was the capital B Black church. So like Dr. Faison, I too love the Black church, and I will always, because I do, I will critique it. I want to, as we have talked this evening about public policy and the Black church, just to remind our viewers that October the 5th is the last day that you can register if you want to vote in this upcoming November 3rd election. Early vote begins on October the 14th, and encourage people to do that. In my closing remarks, I want to just throw a nuance in here and just say we did not get to talk about the selection of our upcoming new police chief for Nashville. And I dare not close this time without talking about that process, and to encourage everyone to go on hub.nashville and make your voice heard. I did see a question in the comments about once we elect people, how do we hold folk accountable? Well, this is one of the ways you get involved. You get involved in organizations and in groups that are doing that work. And so the Black church is our greatest hope, our greatest joy, and our greatest pain. So that is an organization that you can certainly work through to make your voice be heard in all issues of injustice. So thank you again for allowing me to spend time with you this evening.
I want to thank all of my panelists for joining me. It has been an honor to moderate this conversation. I'd like to ask all attendees and our panelists and all of your congregations to please join us on the next conversation, which will take place October 6th, 2020 from 7 p.m. to 8:30 p.m. We hope to always be on time. Tonight, I do want to give one of our attendees the final word. Deron Johnson wrote this as a result of your conversation. He says, on the embrace of an ever broader embodiment of inclusivity, I'm living a version of this journey myself right now. And while it is a journey forward, it has been a slow and cautious one. Dr. Harris's use of the word affirming is particularly important because I come to a lived understanding ever more each day of just how different a tacit toleration feels from a quiet acceptance. And both different yet again from a vocal affirmation of all of God's peoples and creation. The first two may be important starting points, but that's all they are. It's only the last vocal affirmation that truly demonstrates our practice of already all-inclusive embrace of the Creator. I say to you that that comment is important to me because as one who benefits from one of you who paid the price, we cannot move forward until we have understood who is in the company. And then we march forward. Good night.